On April 12, 2023, Seymour Hersh published a new article in his Substack. It is titled Trading with the Enemy. I have been reporting on this channel about the corruption in the Kiev regime, with government officials resigning or being fired one after another. The Japanese media reported that Zelensky was cleaning up corruption in the government, but it has been revealed that Zelensky is not innocent. Cite article from here. Amid rampant corruption in Kiev and as U.S. troops gather at the Ukrainian border. Does the Biden administration have an endgame to the conflict? The Ukraine government, headed by Volodymyr Zelensky, has been using American taxpayers' funds to pay dearly for the vitally needed diesel fuel that is keeping the Ukrainian army on the move in its war with Russia. It is unknown how much the Zelensky government is paying per gallon for the fuel. But the Pentagon was paying as much as $400 per gallon to transport gasoline from a port in Pakistan, via truck or parachute, into Afghanistan during the decades-long American war there. What also is unknown is that Zelensky has been buying the fuel from Russia, the country with which it, and Washington, are at war, and the Ukrainian president and many in his entourage have been skimming untold millions from the American dollars earmarked for diesel fuel payments. One estimate by analysts from the Central Intelligence Agency put the embezzled funds at $400 million last year. At least, another expert compared the level of corruption in Kiev as approaching that of the Afghan war. Although there will be no professional audit reports emerging from the Ukraine. Zelensky's been buying discount diesel from the Russians, one knowledgeable American intelligence official told me. And who's paying for the gas and oil? We are. Putin and his oligarchs are making millions on it. Many government ministries in Kiev have been literally competing, I was told, to set up front companies for export contracts for weapons and ammunition with private arms dealers around the world. All of which provide kickbacks. Many of those companies are in Poland and Czechia, but others are thought to exist in the Persian Gulf and Israel. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that there are others in places like the Cayman Islands and Panama, and there are lots of Americans involved. An American expert on international trade told me. The issue of corruption was directly raised with Zelensky in a meeting last January in Kiev with CIA Director William Burns. His message to the Ukrainian president, I was told by an intelligence official with direct knowledge of the meeting, was out of a 1950s mob movie. The senior generals and government officials in Kiev were angry at what they saw as Zelensky's greed, so Burns told the Ukrainian president, because he was taking a larger share of the skim money than was going to the generals. Burns also presented Zelensky with a list of 35 generals and senior officials whose corruption was known to the CIA and others in the American government. Zelensky responded to the American pressure, 10 days later by publicly dismissing 10 of the most ostentatious officials on the list and doing little else. The 10 he got rid of were brazenly bragging about the money they had, driving around Kiev in their new Mercedes. The intelligence official told me. These are the full text of the article.
Now to the latest in the Ukraine war. A lot is happening there. President Zelensky is under fire for corruption. A new report says he embezzled the aid money. We'll cover all of this, starting with the report on Zelensky. It was released by an American investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter. Recently, he was in the news for saying that America bombed the Nord Stream gas pipelines. And now he's dropped another bombshell. He says Zelensky and his team have embezzled about $400 million. $400 million. Apparently, this was done last year. Do you remember what else started last year? Zelensky began his sacking spree. He fired many top officials, all for corruption. Now the new report says this was done to placate the US. And that American officials knew that Zelensky and team are skimming millions. They wanted the corruption to be more discreet. This is all in Seymour Hersh's report. He says CIA Director William Burns presented a list of 35 names to Zelensky, and some of those people were fired. Zelensky was under pressure from the Americans, so he sacked some of his people. Then Hersh goes on to make other claims, like how Zelensky is actually using American funds to buy Russian oil. He apparently skirts sanctions and uses American funds to get the Russian oil. It seems counterintuitive. Why would he do it? So the obvious question is, how much of the report is true and how does Seymour Hersh know all of this? He says that his sources are anonymous US intelligence officials. But we'll never know for sure, I guess. So expect public denials and a veto on the investigations. But the truth may not come out anytime soon. And speaking of doubt in the face of disturbing information,
what is not mentioned in this report, though, is the diversion of support weapons. This problem has been a problem in Ukraine for a long time, even before this war.
First of all, what everybody must want is peace between Russia and Ukraine. So why would you pour more weapons? Why would you tempt one Ukrainian? Now the leadership of Ukraine has changed, but why would you tempt one or another Ukrainian leadership to broaden the war, where you want, above all, to bring peace, correct? Secondly, in whose hands eventually do such weapons fall? I mean, there's no guarantee in a place like Ukraine that the Ukrainian army, which is involved in the black market in a big way, those weapons could go anywhere.
So far, the diversion of support weapons from the U.S. has been, it was believed to have flowed from the Ukrainian army or volunteer battalions to the black market. Now it turns out that Ukrainian government ministries were actively involved.
A gruesome video has gone viral. It shows the beheading of a Ukrainian. And does the battle for Bakhmut have a winner? Russia says yes, Ukraine says no. There's a horrific video that has been circulating online. We've decided not to show it, and we urge you, for your own peace of mind, to not watch it. The video shows the beheading of a Ukrainian. It was done with a knife, allegedly by Russian soldiers, and they filmed themselves while doing it. It's disgusting and has rightly led to widespread outrage. Zelensky has compared the Russians to ISIS.
There is something that no one in the world can ignore: how easily these beasts kill. This video of the execution of a Ukrainian prisoner of war, the world must see it. This is a video of Russia as it really is. What kind of creatures are they? There are no people for them. A son, a brother, a husband, someone's child. This is a video of Russia trying to make just that the new norm. Such a habit of destroying life. This is not an incident. This is not an episode. This was the case earlier. This was the case in Bucha. Thousands of times. Everyone must react. Every leader. Don't expect it to be forgotten. That time will pass. We are not going to forget anything. Neither are we going to forgive the murderers.
He seems convinced that the video is authentic. So does the European Union. But it gave a caveat before proceeding to chastise Russia.
We don't have more information on the veracity of the video. Having said that, if confirmed, this is yet another brutal reminder about the inhumane nature of the Russian aggression. Killing of prisoners of war is a very serious breach of the Geneva Convention and demonstrates once more Russia's complete disregard of international law, and particular international humanitarian law.
And what does Russia have to say? These were the exact words of their spokesperson. And I'm quoting, "First of all, we need to check the authenticity of this awful footage. Of course, this footage is awful, and first we should check its authenticity, and then we could have a pretext to check whether or not this is true, whether it happened, and if it did, where and by whom it was done. But first of all, in the world of fakes that we inhabit, we need to check the veracity of this footage." The Kremlin has called the video awful, but it says the first step to do is to check the authenticity, and it sounds fair. But how long will this take? Also, who will verify it? If Russian troops are indeed guilty, who will punish them? Unless horrors like these are dealt with urgently, they will be forgotten and perhaps even repeated. As things stand, this video may just end up as another tool of information warfare, which brings us to Bakhmut. Another game of claims and counterclaims. Russia says it is on the verge of capturing Bakhmut, and like clockwork, Ukraine denies it. The Wagner group of mercenaries is fighting for Russia here. They're the ones leading the offensive. And they say they control 80% of Bakhmut now. To counter this, Ukraine has released videos. They show Ukrainian soldiers in Bakhmut. This battle is the longest and bloodiest part of the war, and it rages on. As for the claims and the stories, well, people will believe what they want to believe. That's the whole point of information warfare. Muddy the waters, blur the lines between truth and lies.